Once upon a time, there was a grown-up who had always loved drawing as a child. He remembered how, at the age of 6, he had seen a picture in a book about the jungle, showing a large snake swallowing a wild animal whole. Inspired by that image, he drew his first masterpiece, what looked like a hat to most people, but was actually the snake with the animal inside its belly. Excited, he showed it to the adults around him, asking if it frightened them. But they all said it was just a hat and advised him to focus on more practical things like geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar instead of wasting time on silly drawings. Discouraged, he gave up his dream of becoming an artist and grew up to become a pilot, flying planes across vast skies and distant lands. Yet, deep down, he still tested people with that old drawing of the hat that wasn't a hat, hoping to find someone who could see beyond the obvious. Most grown-ups failed the test, always seeing only the hat, which made him feel lonely in a world full of people who had forgotten how to imagine. Years later, this pilot found himself in a dire situation. While flying over a vast, empty desert far from any civilization, his plane suffered a mechanical failure. It plummeted from the sky, crashing into the endless sands with a thunderous impact. Miraculously, he survived the wreck, but he was utterly alone, with no one around for thousands of miles. He had enough water to last perhaps 8 days, and his only hope was to repair the engine himself before thirst claimed him. As the sun rose on his first morning in that desolate place, he was startled awake by a small, serious voice saying, "If you please, draw me a sheep." Blinking in confusion, he looked up to see a tiny boy standing before him, dressed in peculiar clothes that seemed out of place in the desert heat. The boy had golden hair that shimmered like wheat in the sunlight, and his eyes held a curious, otherworldly innocence. The pilot, exhausted and bewildered, stared at this unexpected visitor who had appeared as if from nowhere. The boy repeated his request patiently, insisting on the drawing of a sheep. The pilot, though not an artist, humored him and sketched a simple sheep on a scrap of paper. But the boy shook his head. It was too sickly looking. Another attempt, and the boy rejected it again. This one seemed too old. A third drawing met with disapproval because it resembled a ram with horns. Frustrated but intrigued, the pilot finally drew a box and told the boy that the sheep he wanted was inside it. To his surprise, the boy's face lit up with delight. "That's exactly what I wanted. Do you think it will need much grass?" he asked, peering at the imaginary crate with genuine concern. In that moment, the pilot realized this was no ordinary child. He could see things that others couldn't, much like how the pilot's old drawing hid a deeper truth. As the days passed under the relentless desert sun, all the while, the boy stayed nearby, sharing fragments of his extraordinary life in quiet, thoughtful conversations. "He came from a very small planet," he explained, "so tiny that one could walk around it in just a few steps. On this asteroid-like home, he tended to 3 volcanoes, 2 active ones that he cleaned regularly to prevent eruptions, and 1 extinct that he swept just in case. He also had to be vigilant against certain large seeds that could grow into massive trees with roots capable of splitting the planet apart if not pulled up in time. These tasks filled his days with purpose, a simple routine that kept his world in order. But what occupied his thoughts most was a flower he had left behind, a unique bloom with petals as vibrant as a sunset. She had emerged from a seed one morning, growing quickly and demanding constant attention. She was vain and delicate, always complaining about drafts or asking for screens to shield her from the wind. The boy had catered to her every whim, watering her, protecting her under a glass dome at night to ward off the cold. Yet, despite her prickly nature armed with thorns she claimed were for defense against tigers, though no such beasts existed on his tiny world, he had grown deeply attached to her. She was his only companion, and in her beauty, he found a kind of love that was both joyful and painful. One day, however, after a misunderstanding where she accused him of not caring enough, he decided to leave his planet in search of something more. hoping to understand the vast universe beyond his solitary existence. To travel, the boy had waited for a flock of migrating birds to pass by and hitched a ride on their wings, bidding farewell to his flower with a heavy heart. His journey took him to several neighboring asteroids, each inhabited by a single grown-up whose peculiarities baffled him. The first was ruled by a man in royal robes who sat on a throne, commanding everything around him as if the universe revolved around his orders. "Approach, my subject," he would say to any visitor, even though he had no real power. He ordered the sun to set at precise times, claiming credit when it happened naturally, and forbade yawning or other trivial acts. The boy, puzzled, asked why he needed to command things that occurred on their own. The king replied that authority must be reasonable, adapting to what is possible. But the boy saw only a lonely figure clinging to illusions of control, and he soon departed, thinking grown-ups were very strange indeed. On the next asteroid, he encountered a man dressed in fine clothes, tipping his hat repeatedly and demanding applause. "Admire me," he exclaimed, thriving on constant praise. If the boy clapped, the man bowed deeply, his face beaming with vanity. But without admiration, he wilted like a neglected plant. The boy tried to understand, clapping politely at first, but he grew weary of the endless cycle. "Why do you need this so much?" he asked. The vain man explained that being admired made him feel like the most handsome, richest, and intelligent being in existence, even if no one else was around to compare. The boy shook his head, seeing how such self-absorption trapped the man in eternal solitude, and he moved on, wondering at the odd ways grown-ups filled their emptiness. The third planet housed a sorrowful figure surrounded by empty bottles, his head bowed in shame. "What are you doing?" the boy inquired. The man admitted he was drinking to forget that he was ashamed of drinking a vicious circle that spun endlessly. The boy pressed for more, learning that the man's life was consumed by this habit, leaving no room for joy or purpose. Pitying him, the boy left quickly, his young mind grappling with the concept of self-inflicted misery. How could someone choose to drown in forgetfulness rather than face their own reflections? Next came an asteroid occupied by a busy individual scribbling numbers on papers, claiming ownership of the stars. "I count them, I own them," he boasted, locking his possessions in a bank that existed only in his mind. The boy asked what good it did to own stars he couldn't touch or use. The businessman waved him off, too absorbed in his calculations to ponder the question. "Ownership means power," he muttered, but the boy saw only a hollow pursuit, where numbers replaced real connections. Shaking his head, he continued his voyage, feeling a growing disillusionment with the adult world. The fifth world was perhaps the smallest yet, barely large enough for a street lamp and its keeper. This man lit the lamp at sunset and extinguished it at dawn, but since his planet rotated once a minute, he was in perpetual motion, never resting. "Orders are orders," he said wearily when the boy suggested he walk around the planet to follow the sun and sleep. The boy admired his dedication, but mourned the absurdity faithfulness to a rule that had long outlived its usefulness. Bidding farewell, he thought how sad it was that duty could become a prison. On the sixth asteroid, a scholarly old man pored over maps and books, calling himself an explorer without ever leaving his desk. He recorded facts from others, but never verified them himself, deeming direct experience unworthy of a true scientist. When the boy described his flower, the man dismissed it as ephemeral, not worthy of notation because it wouldn't last forever. "But it's beautiful," the boy protested. The geographer insisted on permanence for importance, advising the boy to visit a large planet nearby called Earth. Intrigued, the boy set off, carrying with him questions about what truly mattered in the universe. Earth was immense, teeming with billions of people, mountains, oceans, and deserts, landing in a sandy expanse. The boy first met a snake coiled in the dunes, its scales glistening like gold. The creature spoke in riddles, claiming it could send anyone back to where they came from with a single touch. "This place is lonely," the boy observed, and the snake agreed, noting that one could be alone even among men. Wary of its poisonous promise, the boy wandered on, climbing a mountain in hopes of seeing the whole world. At the peak, he called out, but only echoes replied, mimicking his words without understanding. "How odd," he thought, "they repeat everything but mean nothing." Descending, he stumbled upon a garden filled with thousands of flowers, identical to the one he had left behind. "I thought mine was unique," he lamented, realizing his bloom was just one of many roses. Overwhelmed by sadness, he lay in the grass and wept. It was then that a fox appeared, sleek and cunning, asking to be tamed. "What does that mean?" the boy asked. The fox explained that taming created bonds, making ordinary things special through time and care. "If you tame me, my life will be filled with sunshine when I hear your footsteps," it said. The boy agreed, and they spent days together, establishing rites and routines that turned the fox from a stranger into a friend. But when it was time to part, the fox revealed a secret one sees clearly only with the heart. The essential is invisible to the eyes. The boy understood then that his flower was unique because he had loved her, watered her, protected her. The multitudes in the garden meant nothing without that bond. Energized by this wisdom, the boy continued exploring Earth, encountering more grown-ups in their baffling routines. He met a man directing trains that rushed people from place to place, never knowing why they hurried. "They are never satisfied where they are," the switchman observed. Another sold pills that quench thirst, saving time for more time-saving, perhaps. The boy laughed at the absurdity, seeing how adults chased efficiency without purpose. Eventually, his path led him to the pilot in the desert, where their stories intertwined. The boy shared his adventures while the pilot repaired his plane, drawing sheep and listening to tales of volcanoes, flowers, and foxes. As the boy's water supply dwindled, he too was stranded. Having arrived by mysterious means, he grew nostalgic for his tiny planet. On the 8th day, with the pilot's engine finally fixed, the boy announced he must return home. "How?" the pilot asked, worried. The boy pointed to the snake from his arrival, explaining it would help him shed his earthly body to travel light among the stars. That night, under a canopy of twinkling lights, the boy approached the snake. The pilot begged him not to go, but the boy reassured him, "It will look like I'm dying, but it's not so. My body is too heavy. I must leave it behind." With a flash of yellow like lightning, the snake struck, and the boy fell gently to the sand, lifeless. The pilot, heartbroken, carried him like a fragile treasure, but by morning, the body was gone, vanished as mysteriously as the boy had appeared. In the years that followed, the pilot often gazed at the stars, wondering if the boy had made it home to his flower. He listened for laughter in the night sky, imagining the boy's joy at reuniting with his world, and whenever he saw sheep, he hoped none had eaten the precious bloom. Through this encounter, the pilot learned to see beyond the surface, cherishing the invisible ties that bind us. He shared the story to remind others that in a world of grown-up preoccupations, it's the heart's vision that reveals true beauty and meaning. The meaning of this story is that it teaches us to look beyond appearances and value the intangible bonds of love and friendship. It reminds us that what is essential in life is invisible to the eyes, and that true understanding comes from the heart. In a universe filled with loneliness and absurdity, it's the relationships we nurture that give our existence purpose and joy, urging us to preserve our childlike wonder amid the complexities of adulthood.